What's up, Red Tree Church? Pastor Sam here. I wanted to give you guys a quick devotional thought this week. So we're in the second week of Advent, and the emphasis this week is on this idea of faith. We've pointed to the story of Joseph and Mary and the faith that they showed in God to kind of move forward with the plan that He had given them to carry and care for Jesus, and how that speaks into the larger work that God is doing in the world, even though it would cost them greatly. And it's a beautiful story, right? And it really is a thing worthy of our reflection this week. It reminded me perhaps of what is the most famous passage on faith. And in Hebrews 11, the opening verse says this: "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen." I love that verse. It's so tidy, right? It's such a quick little verse. It's easy to grab a hold of. It's easy to remember that faith is an assurance of things hoped for. It's a confidence of things unseen. It's this beautiful summary of an idea that I think we all long for in our lives. We all, as believers, long for more faith in our lives. And so it's good to have a text like that we can just kind of grab a hold of and come back to. But I have to be honest, even as I say that, I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, for me specifically, I struggle with faith. It doesn't come easily for me. I have to look for it. I have to seek it out. I have to fight for it. It's definitely not my spiritual gift, right? It's not as easy maybe for me as it is for others. I have an atheist friend who likes to say that faith is the ability to believe things without evidence. He says that Christians claim to have some kind of superpower that allows them to know for certain things that are unknowable. Basically, the idea that faith is a sort of a form of mental junk food that allows you to ignore a lack of evidence for things like the deity of Jesus or the resurrection of Jesus. I have to be honest. I understand that sentiment. As someone who's historically struggled with faith, I have often looked on at my brothers and sisters for whom faith seems to come more naturally and thought things like, how do you do it? How do you walk with such confidence? How can you be so sure of things unseen? But ultimately, when I reflect on this sort of thing, I think I remember what I think my friend misses in this equation. And that's this. Faith is not an abstract mental exercise. It's a deeply personal and relational experience. It's about our deep gut level trust in a good Father to do what He has said He'll do. You see, if you go on and read the rest of Hebrews 11, right after that quick and succinct definition, what you'll find is a series of these short little stories going back over the whole of Scripture, stories about people trusting God in incredibly hard circumstances where they don't have all the data and they have no idea, no way to know if things will turn out the way they want. But according to the text, they trust God to care for them. And it culminates in this amazing truth. This is the end of chapter 11, going into chapter 12, where it says, Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith. See, He's the author of our faith because He is God. He is the one that this cloud of witnesses, this history of believers has actively trusted in to care for them. But He's the perfecter of our faith because Jesus Himself sat in the garden and wrestled with the weight of the suffering He was going to endure, wrestled with the weight of the circumstances within which He found Himself, and He still chose to trust the will of His good Father, to accomplish what He said He would accomplish, to trust that God is who He claims to be. He is the perfecter of our faith. So you see, when we talk about faith, we're not talking about ignoring facts to just believe whatever we want to believe. We're talking about leaning into the fact that God is trustworthy. Now, if you don't believe in God, that's obviously a moot point. But for the Christian, faith is absolutely an expression of trust. Trust that God is who he claims to be. Trust that God does what he says he'll do. Trust ultimately that God keeps his promises. Ultimately, faith is about relationship with God. The more that we know him, the more we learn to trust him. The more that we trust him, the more that we will live in faith. So this week, in Advent, as we reflect on the life of faith, let me give this scripture for us to meditate on. Not a traditional Advent scripture, not even a traditional faith scripture, but I think it'll be good for our hearts and souls this week. This is in Proverbs 3, and it says this: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." Beloved, our God keeps his promises. He's worthy of trust. So this week, I'd encourage you guys, ask yourself these two questions, very specific questions. What promises has God made to you? And do you trust them? Love you guys. We'll see you on later this week.